My son said I contributed nothing of value, so I proved him in the cruelest way a father could. David Moretti, a corporate lawyer earning $480,000 a year, living in my $3.2 million house, driving an Audi, wearing suits that cost thousands, all of it bought with my 58 years of labor. From the days I stood over the stove until midnight, my hands cracked from grease and dish soap. And yet, in front of his girlfriend's wealthy parents, he looked me straight in the face and said, "You just eat this family's food and don't contribute anything. You have no value to this family." The room went silent. I didn't react. I didn't get angry. I didn't explain. I just stared at him for 15 seconds and said slowly, "Interesting point of view, son." What he didn't know was that I had planned 3 moves that would make his entire phony world collapse right before his eyes. And the first call that night, that was when everything began. If you've ever been looked down on by your own family, leave a comment. True value needs no words. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell because you won't want to miss how I got everything back in the fairest way. Back then, the kitchen was always warm, the smell of tomatoes simmering in olive oil, the clinking of a spoon against the pot, the laughter of a little boy standing on a chair, holding a plate too big for his hands. Now it's different. The place once filled with sunlight and voices now smells only of polished wood and cold floor cleaner, the recessed lights reflecting off empty walls. You want to know why I did what I did? Listen, I'll show you the kind of man my son has become and the emptiness he left behind. David wasn't always like this. When he was little, he sat on a high chair watching me stir the sauce for Saturday dinner, his small hands covered in gnocchi flour, his eyes lighting up every time I spoke Italian. He used to scribble on the living room wall boats, loaves of bread, the word Moretti written unevenly with a wax crayon. That boy died somewhere along the road to law school. The first sign was his name. On paper, it never changed. He was still Antonio Moretti. But in his career, he erased his roots and called himself David Moretti. Shorter, more American, easier to digest. "Clients can pronounce it better, Dad," he said. Sure, easier to hide, too. Then came the cleansing of family photos, a silent ritual. I came home one day to find him taking down the frames. Each one hit the floor with a dull sound, dust rising like ashes. My parents' wedding photo in Sorrento, his baptism at St. Pietro's Church, our family feasts on holidays one by one. They disappeared. In their place hung soulless paintings bought from a furniture store, the corners of the room now cold as a skeleton of a home. 56 years of history packed into a few cardboard boxes shoved under the staircase. "The house needs to look more modern for Lauren's colleagues," he said, reading the words as if from a manual. Lauren, his girlfriend of 3 years, from the wealthy Whitmore family in Hartford Bay, thought marinara sauce came in a $12 jar from the grocery store. But the worst part wasn't her taste in food. It was the way David introduced me to people. Last December, David hosted a dinner, inviting 8 colleagues from Brierson and Cole corporate lawyers who made a living out of other people's time and money. I was in the kitchen, refilling their glasses, when I heard him speak to his manager. "Oh, that's Joe. He handles the building maintenance." The words cut like a blade. Building maintenance. 50 years I ran Moretti's table on Mariners Row. 50 years I fed half of Haven Point, employed 48 workers, paid for my son's tuition at Yale University. And now, in front of the people eating the food I cooked, I was just the maintenance guy. The wine glass in my hand rattled. I heard polite, hollow laughter ripple through the living room, courteous yet condescending. That night, I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I simply stood there, listening to them talk about ski trips in Aspen, their lodges in Luminara Bay, and private schools for their children. But I remembered. Every time someone asked about me, the answer was always the same. "Joe handles the maintenance." Never my father. Never the man who worked 50 years so I could wear $1,000 suits. The house slowly became a museum of my son's shame toward his roots. My mother's cross in the hallway was gone, leaving only rusted nail holes. The brass pasta roller I brought from Italy in 1978 was stuffed in the basement, buried under paint cans and old tools. Every time I walked by and heard the metal clink, it felt like my heart cracked a little more. The framed review calling Moretti's table the pride of Haven Point had vanished. Instead, the living room walls now displayed Princeton diplomas, law certifications, photos of him shaking hands with judges and politicians, a billboard for David Moretti, the successful American. Sighed. One night, as he showed off his new photo online, I looked at the bare wall where he used to draw then at him, standing in his expensive suit. I laughed, dryly, without warmth. Clients can pronounce it better, huh? He smiled, eyes already empty. I replied, yeah. Easier to forget, too. The words hung in the air. Something inside me died that night. Every erased photo, every removed relic, every hidden memory, they weren't just objects. They were a ritual of burying one's origin. And when a man buries his roots, he doesn't just abandon the past, he hands his future to those who will never value it. On that empty wall, between the Americanized slogans and the glossy achievements, I saw a sentence written in invisible ink across my heart. My son is dead. The one living in this house is only a man who bears the name Moretti. That was the moment I stopped blaming myself. That was the moment when a cold, deliberate decision began to take shape. Money cut me just as deep. In 2018, I sold Moretti's table for $2,400,000, the retirement nest egg I had spent a lifetime building. I once dreamed of returning to Sorrento to visit relatives, sitting and watching the red sunset over the bay, enjoying peaceful days after 58 years of working 18-hour days. But David Moretti had other plans. You should invest that money in the house, he said, his voice steady and cold like a financial advisor speaking to a client, not a son to his father. Renovating will raise the property value. It's the smart move. I listened still, naive enough to believe he understood what home meant. Then the old kitchen, the one that used to fill the air with fried garlic and laughter, was torn out. They took down the wall where I had marked his height in pencil. They removed the pendant light my mother chose on that trip to Italy in 1983. With every hammer blow, I felt as if someone were striking my own heart. The new kitchen, custom cabinetry, hardwood floors, redesigned garden, a total of $510,000. All David's choices, minimalist, modern, cold as a gallery. When it was finished, he said only one thing. Finally, it looks like a place I can invite clients. No thanks. No look of understanding. Only smug satisfaction because he had erased the last traces of where he came from. I stood in that house, the white lights reflecting off the new wood floors, cold as steel. No tomato smell. No olive oil, no pot bubbling, only the scent of polish and expensive peppermint oil. I felt like a stranger in my own life. I kept one worn brick, the spot that had soaked grease, flour, and a child's laughter. It now sits in a drawer of my cabinet, the sole witness to a house that once had a soul. On social media, Lauren Whitmore turned the Port Meriden home into a virtual stage for a perfect life. Sunlit photos, organic flowers, a cheese board from Bellini's deli caption, "Thank you for this beautiful home. So lucky to live in this amazing space." 400,000 people liked it. No one knew that that amazing home had been bought with mornings when I woke at 3, flipping burgers until my hands were raw, nights of chopping vegetables into the late hours, and days standing on concrete until my feet bled. I read that caption and gave a thin laugh. Home is where the heart is, I thought, but my heart had been replaced by plywood and LED lights. I wondered, was it my fault? Had I taught him to work hard but forgotten to teach him to love the things that made him who he was? I looked around the new house, glossy, clean, perfect, without a stain, without a memory. Maybe that was what David wanted, a world with no trace of me. But I also understood this: when someone scrubs their past clean, they are erasing their own soul. And I knew, one day, he would pay for that soulless house. The real breaking point came 4 months ago. Lauren Whitmore's parents flew in from Hartford Bay, Richard and Eleanor Whitmore, an old Yankee family. the kind of wealth that seeps into the bloodline from ancestors who first set foot on American soil aboard the earliest ships. I was excited. Finally, I had a chance to show them genuine Italian hospitality through the only thing I truly knew how to do, cooking with my heart. The kitchen was filled with the scent of simmering tomato sauce and red wine. San Marzano tomatoes imported from Sorrento, sausages from Bellini's Deli, fresh basil picked from the garden, all blending with the rhythmic sounds of a knife hitting the cutting board and a wooden spoon stirring the pot. It was the sound of a home that still had a soul. For 6 hours, I lived in anticipation, imagining a real family dinner story shared, laughter filling the air, maybe even showing them a few old photo albums from Haven Point District. Then came the sound of leather shoes on the hardwood floor, cold and hard like a death notice. David appeared in the kitchen doorway, his shirt pressed crisp, the expensive cologne overpowering the scent of my simmering sauce. "Dad, Lauren and I have reservations at Maison Levine tonight," he said, smooth and detached, as if negotiating a contract instead of speaking to his father. "It's an important evening. I need to make a good impression on her family." I froze. The smell of tomato sauce suddenly turned sharp, bitter, almost burning. "What about the dishes I've been cooking all day?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Dad, they prefer something more refined," he replied without looking at me. "I need everything to be professional." I stayed silent. The afternoon sunlight poured through the kitchen window, golden and warm like the sauce in the pot, but as David stepped closer, he pulled the curtain shut. Only the cold white light remained, sterile as an operating room. I understood then. Tonight wasn't a dinner. It was surgery where the past would be cut away, and my own son was holding the scalpel. 3 days later, I opened the trash bin. The plastic containers were still there, sealed, untouched. The sauce had thickened, a dark film forming on top. 6 hours of cooking, 49 years of experience. And now, all of it lay buried in the trash along with my pride. I stood there, staring at the stacked containers like tiny coffins, each one holding a fragment of the Moretti family's soul. The sour smell of fermented tomatoes filled the air, sharp enough to make my head ache. The boy who once sat beside me, folding ravioli, begging for an extra meatball, laughing whenever I spoke Italian, that boy was gone. Now, in the house I built with my sweat, there was only a man wearing my son's face, living among the comforts I created, ashamed of the very blood running through his veins. I sat down, looking at my hands, the same hands once calloused from knives and hot pans, now trembling. I asked myself, was it me? Was I the one who taught him how to climb, but forgot to teach him how to bow his head? Was I too proud of his success to see that every step he took upward was another step away from this family? I thought I had already endured enough. But I was wrong. The storm hadn't arrived yet. And when it did, I would finally understand what my son destroyed that night wasn't just a dinner. It was the father in me. The night of April 22nd, 2023. Outside, Port Meriden shimmered with lights, but inside, only a pale yellow glow spilled weakly across cold white walls. I sat alone, eating reheated Chinese takeout, the lukewarm scent of loneliness. I didn't yet know that in just a few hours, the thing I still called family would shatter beyond repair. It was the Whitmores' second visit. David no longer pretended to ask me to cook. "Dad, tonight's a business dinner," he said. "Richard might open a few important doors for me." I nodded. "I understand. I'll make myself something simple." He opened the fridge. "There's leftover Chinese food from yesterday. Just heat it up." I stared at the fogged plastic container, a small, casual sentence, sharp as a blade to the heart. And where were they going? La Rive Atelier. $560 per person, not including wine, all paid from the living allowance I gave him. Around 11:15, the front door opened. Footsteps, laughter, Eleanor's voice echoing down the hallway. "Oh, David, the house looks even more beautiful at night with all this lighting." I was washing the last plate when they entered, David first, Lauren following, then Richard, tall, lean, silver-haired, wearing a gray blazer scented with expensive cologne that smelled of money itself, and Eleanor, holding a Maison Aurel handbag I'd once seen scrolling through Instagram about $12,000. I intended to quietly step away, but Eleanor saw me. "Oh, hello. You must be Luca, right? At least you still remember my name." I smiled and bowed slightly. "I hope you enjoyed your dinner." "Wonderful," she replied. "David has such great taste in restaurants." David quickly cut in. Dad just finished cleaning up and was about to go upstairs. But Richard's eyes were scanning the kitchen, the custom cabinets, Italian marble counters, professional-grade appliances, all of it paid for by me. "Impressive, David," he said. "First-class renovation. Must have cost a fortune." There it was, the moment I thought he'd finally say, "My father paid for it," the moment he'd show a flicker of pride. But David just smiled. "Yes, we invested heavily, really transformed it from what it used to be. We invested." Eleanor opened the fridge, looking for sparkling water, and spotted the pasta containers pappardelle with bolognese I had simmered for 10 hours. "Oh, someone cooked this, it looks delicious." I couldn't stop myself. "I made that on Tuesday. Family recipe from Sorrento. If you'd like, I can reheat." David's eyes turned to ice. "Dad, they just had dinner at La Rive Atelier. I'm sure they're full." But Eleanor smiled politely. "Actually, I'd love a small taste. I'm learning about authentic Italian cuisine." I took a step toward the stove, hand reaching for the pot. "Dad." David's voice cut through the air, sharp, rigid, surgical. "They don't need you to cook. You've done enough. Done enough." As if feeding people were a debt to be erased. As if hospitality were an inconvenience. I set the spoon down, turned around, and stood in the kitchen I had paid to rebuild on the floor I had installed, beneath the lights I had bought. Richard tilted his head, his polite tone curdling into something sharper. "So, Luca, what exactly is your role here? Are you David's business partner?" Silence, the kind that stretches like glass about to crack. This was David's moment, the chance to say a single line, "He's my father." Instead, he met Lauren's parents' eyes and said slowly, each word carved like bone, "Luca lives here, but to be honest, he just eats our food and doesn't contribute anything. He doesn't add any value to this household." Each he hit the floor like shattered glass. No one spoke. Only the faint clink of wine and the soft tick of the clock filled the room. I felt the blood pounding in my ears, each beat a hammer. Eleanor went pale. Richard cleared his throat and looked away. Lauren lowered her gaze, and I stood there for exactly 10 seconds, counting the stairs collapsing inside me. The son I had bent my back for, sacrificed my health, my friends, my family, the boy I sent to the best schools, had just called me a freeloader, right there in my kitchen, in my house, among the things I bought, surrounded by the luxury my 45 years behind a stove had paid for. I raised my head. My voice was calm, steady like a sentence already written. "Interesting point of view, son." The air changed color. Everyone felt it. David stammered. "Dad, I didn't mean—" "No," I cut him off. "You said exactly what you meant." I turned to Richard and Eleanor, the people he was so desperate to impress. "Have a pleasant evening." Then I walked upstairs. Each step struck the heart of the old house like a drumbeat. In my room, I didn't turn on the light. Only the glow of my laptop screen illuminated my face. 3 calls, 3 moves, Sorrento, the lawyer, the broker. By morning, my ungrateful son would learn. A father's silence can destroy far more than his anger ever could. Part 6. Friday. The moves begin. Friday morning, April 25th, 2023. A thin veil of gray mist hung over Port Meriden after a night of rain. Inside the wide, echoing house, the air was thick, heavy, so still that each tick of the clock sounded like a countdown to something inevitable. I had been up since 6, coffee brewed, papers stacked neatly on the table. Today wasn't an ordinary morning. Today was the day I began reclaiming everything I had given away too easily. The morning conversation. David came down the stairs in his pajamas, hair tousled, eyes still glazed with sleep. "Dad, about last night. I didn't look up from the paper. The coffee's still hot. I brewed it 30 minutes ago." He poured himself a cup, added oat milk, $8 a half gallon, and sat across from me. I think we should talk. I folded the newspaper, met his eyes. There's nothing to talk about. You only said what you believed to be true. I respect honesty. He froze. In the quiet kitchen, the clock's steady tick, tick, echoed like a distant warning. For the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes, fear. A faint, uncertain kind of fear, like an animal realizing the hunter had switched places with it. I stood, reached for my coat. I have some things to take care of today. Don't wait for dinner. Stop 1, Harborwest Bank. The branch was cool and sterile, the scent of steel and glass mixed with disinfectant. My reflection stared back at me from the polished floor. A 70-year-old man with silver hair and eyes that no longer trembled. Sandra Collins, my longtime account manager, greeted me with her professional smile. "Good morning, Mr. Moretti. It's been a while. What can I do for you today?" "I need to know the current market value of my property." Keys clacked softly. "Estimated at around $3.2 million, just as you expected. If sold for cash, no conditions, how long would it take to close?" "Roughly 20 days, possibly less." "Good. Make a note for me, I want it gone quietly." She looked up, hesitating as if to ask why, but my eyes kept her silent. Stop 2. Chen Global Legal Services, Alderwood Avenue. The office was small, bright, impeccably organized. The air smelled of paper and fresh ink. Ethan Lin, an immigration attorney with calm eyes and perfect posture, reviewed the file in front of him. "You're sponsoring 4 relatives from Italy, Matteo, Isabella, Enzo, and Alessia Moretti, ages between 20 and 30, single, clean records, all in or recently out of university. I've reviewed their documents." "That's correct. The total projected cost will be about $97,000 per person, approximately $460,000 in all. You'll be financially responsible for them during the first few years: housing, insurance, job assistance." "Money isn't the issue." I paused, letting my voice drop lower. "I've spent my whole life supporting someone who never learned gratitude. These 4, at least they understand what it means to be thankful." Ethan nodded slightly, his expression tightening as if he sensed this wasn't just a sponsorship, but the beginning of something much larger. Stop 3. Harborline Realty Group, Willowcrest Avenue. A room flooded with morning light. The glass walls reflected slanted sunbeams across the hardwood. Clara Navarro, an energetic realtor with sharp intuition, looked up at me over her thin-framed glasses. "Mr. Moretti, it's been a long time. How's retirement treating you since you sold Moretti's Table?" "Quite productive, Clara. I'm here to discuss selling my house." Quote. Her brows lifted, her tone brightened. "A beautiful property, prime location, recently renovated. Downsizing, I presume." "Call it that. I need the sale to be fast and discreet, cash buyers only. No inspections, no loans, close within 30 days. I can line up buyers by Monday. The market's on fire right now." "Perfect. One more thing my son must not know until the sale is complete." Clara hesitated for a heartbeat, then nodded, her voice softening. "Understood. Everything will go through me." Stop 4. Seaview Financial. I chose a different branch, no familiar faces. Opened a new account, completely detached from anything David could reach. Transferred $600,000 into it, the seed fund for the moves to come. Evening return. 5 o'clock. David lounged on the sofa, feet on the coffee table, remote in hand as if the house belonged to him. "How was your day, Dad?" "Productive," I said. That evening, I cooked for 1. Spaghetti aglio e olio, oil, garlic, pepper, and silence. David went out with Lauren, likely to some trendy cocktail bar, spending money he had never earned. I sat in the kitchen, reviewing the file Ethan Lin had given me: the financial commitments, visa timelines, projected approvals. Everything meshed perfectly, the gears of a quiet machine beginning to turn. My phone buzzed. A message from Clara Navarro. 3 serious buyers already. Would you like me to schedule showings for tomorrow afternoon?" I replied, "Yes, Sunday, 3 to 5 p.m. The light will be beautiful." I knew David's schedule better than he did. Every Sunday, brunch in the Mission District, shopping, art galleries, never home before 6. Perfect. Sunday would be the dawn of his twilight, and he had no idea it was coming. Sunday, April 21st, the sky over Port Meriden was clear, sunlight spilling gold across 218 Harborview Lane, as if deliberately illuminating every human choice. A light breeze moved on the porch. Inside me, a storm stood still. 12:20 p.m. David and Lauren Whitmore left for brunch like any other weekend. Toast with butter, $60 mimosas, talk of a destination wedding in Tuscany. For them, it was a milestone of having made it. For me, it was the final snip that would sever the roots. 2:35 p.m. Clara arrived with 3 prospective buyers. From the bedroom window, I watched 3 cars pull up at the gate in sequence. Tesla Model S, a tech couple in their late 40s who'd just sold a startup to Google for $50 million. The wife's high heels clicked sharply on the wood floor, the same floor that once held little David's first unsteady steps. "The renovated kitchen is gorgeous," she murmured, running her hand along the Italian marble I had paid for. Her husband whispered to Clara Navarro, "This location is perfect. Everything in Haven Point District is within walking distance. We can go into escrow on Tuesday." BMW X7, a top banker in his 40s, looking for a place to entertain high-end clients. He craned his neck to study the crown molding. "This has character, not the soulless feel of downtown condos. I'll pay the asking price in cash, no inspection." Mercedes G-Wagon, a family relocated from New York. The father runs a hedge fund, the mother trades art. They lingered in the living room for 30 minutes, imagining evening dinner parties. The previous owner clearly had taste, the mother said, unaware that the previous owner stood upstairs listening to every word. 5:20 p.m. viewings ended. Clara was nearly trembling with excitement. "Mr. Moretti, I've never seen a market like this. 3 cash offers all at or above asking. Tech couple, $3,700,000. Banker, $4 million. Hedge fund family, $3,750,000, but they want to close in 2 weeks." I took a sip of coffee. 2 weeks, I repeated. Long enough to rebuild one life and to destroy another. Clara frowned. "Won't you consider the higher offers? 2 of them are more than the others." "I'm not selling for money, Clara. I'm selling for time." At 6 o'clock in the evening I signed the purchase agreement. $3,750,000, closing date May 5, 2023. That night David was at a bar with Lauren. I sat in the kitchen, opened my address book, and began the calls that would bring new life. Matteo Moretti answered amid the sizzle of frying pans in suburban Sorrento. "Zio Luca, are you really going to sponsor me to come to America?" "Really. I want the smell of flour and tomatoes back in this house, not $400 perfume." Matteo laughed the truest laugh I'd heard in years. Isabella Moretti, a nursing student whose voice still carried tears from tuition pressure, replied, "Yes," without hesitation when I spoke one sentence to her. Enzo Moretti, a young engineer stuck in part-time work, said, "I'll be the bridge between Italy and America," his voice steady like a steel rim. Alessia Moretti, the young artist, whispered, "I will paint my family again on a different sky." 4 calls, 4 invitations to change lives, 4 wholehearted yes answers. "When, Uncle?" Matteo asked. "Chen Global Legal will file the visas on Wednesday. If all goes well, you'll be here this summer." And so it happened. Wednesday, Ethan Lin, Chen Global Legal, filed the complete immigration petitions. Thursday, I transferred $76,000 as the first legal fee payment through Seaview Financial. Friday, I reserved Harborline Studios, a 700-square-foot studio, for $2,500 a month. Just enough space for an old man in his 80s who needed little room, only a place to breathe. All week, David never so much as suspected. He was busy with big matters at the firm, stopping by the house only to sleep and change. When present, he remained polite and cold, placing me in the role of inherited furniture. On Saturday morning, March 23rd, Clara called. The buyers are ready for a final walkthrough on Monday. Everything is on track to close April 2nd. Good. And remember, my son must not know. Your secret is safe. That afternoon I began to pack. Not much, only what mattered most. My parents' photos, the culinary awards, the brass pasta roller, my mother's cross. The items David had hidden out of shame. 3 cardboard boxes. They contained the soul of a lifetime. And the future he was so proud of? It would leave 218 Harborview Lane with the furniture and the chandelier as quickly as he once brushed the past away. But before everything changed hands, I had one more duty: to bring the real family to America. The main performance had only just lowered its curtain. July 20th, 2023. International Arrivals, Port Meriden Airport, PMX. Sunlight streamed through the massive glass panes, spilling across the polished floor like a mirror reflecting memory itself. I stood at the waiting gate, holding 4 name boards: Matteo Moretti, Isabella Moretti, Enzo Moretti, Alessia Moretti. Each sign was a fragment of blood and lineage returning home not just to reunite, but to close a chapter built on lies. The first to emerge was Matteo, 31, strong-built like a boxer, carrying a worn canvas bag and an old wooden box that held our great-grandfather's pasta tools. "Zio Luca!" he shouted, dropping his bag and throwing his arms around me. The smell of flour and cold metal from the pasta roller rushed in the scent of a homeland still alive. "Welcome to America, Matteo. 3 months ago, I was washing dishes in the suburbs of Sorrento, €8 an hour. Now you're giving me a chance to show Port Meriden what real Italian food tastes like." Next came Isabella, 26, clutching a set of nursing textbooks and an old rosary tight against her chest. She cried without sound, tears falling fast, stopping faster, the reflex of someone who has suffered yet never complained. "Zio, I've been studying English for 6 months. I'm afraid my accent is too heavy." "Don't be afraid. Your accent is part of history. Keep it, as you keep your roots." Then Enzo arrived, 24, a young engineer with fluent English, intelligence in his eyes, and humility etched beneath it. He opened his suitcase and took out an old photograph: my father standing in front of Moretti's restaurant in Sorrento, 1952. "Grandpa, Jennifer said this photo belongs to you." My hands trembled. Through the glass, I saw that face not unlike David's, but the eyes were different. They carried gratitude, not arrogance. Finally, Alessia, 20, the youngest, clutching a sketchbook covered in stickers from every museum in Italy. "Zio, thank you for this chance. I promise I won't waste it." I smiled. "You are family. Family doesn't waste opportunities, they create them." The drive back into the city was a symphony: rapid Italian chatter, laughter, the sound of car windows rolling down to catch the sea breeze of Meriden. Matteo asked about the restaurant business. Isabella wanted to know about local nursing schools. Enzo was fascinated by American tech firms. Alessia kept snapping photos of the Meriden Span Bridge, the late afternoon sun glittering over the water. Everything David had rejected, they embraced with pride. I had rented a temporary house in Brookhaven Terrace, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, small but warm. As soon as we stepped inside, Isabella went straight to the kitchen and brewed real Italian coffee, the rich, earthy aroma my son once dismissed as too strong. "Zio Luca," Matteo said, looking around the simple living room, "this is more than enough. You've given us everything." That dinner felt like a resurrection ceremony. I cooked carbonara exactly the way my mother had taught me. Candlelight flickered, reflecting off the old photo of my father that Enzo had brought. Isabella read a short prayer before the meal, her voice trembling slightly. The scent of black pepper, guanciale fat, and egg mixed with the aroma of Italian coffee together, they became the sacred fragrance of heritage. Alessia opened her sketchbook and showed me her drawings: Italian streets, our grandmother, the Amalfi Coast, all alive with color and soul. "I'll paint America too," she said softly, "but through Italian eyes, so they'll see we came to bring beauty, not to take it." Enzo opened his laptop, presenting a business plan for a consulting firm to help Italian companies expand into the U.S. I want to be the bridge between the old country and the new one. Isabella had already researched nursing programs at Meriden Medical and MU Nursing. I want to care for the elderly, for people like you, Zio, people who deserve respect. Matteo ended the dinner with a firm voice. I'm going to open a restaurant. Not a fancy one, but one with soul. I asked, what will you call it? He smiled. Moretti's. We'll keep the name with pride. In that moment, I understood exactly what I had done. I hadn't just brought 4 young people to America. I had brought my real family home. What David had rejected, they honored. What he found shameful, they carried like a badge of dignity. The next morning, I went to the office and signed the final documents to complete the sale of 218 Harborview Lane. Sunlight poured through the glass, shining across a photo of 4 young faces laughing together. I exhaled, slow, steady, final. My true family had returned, and now justice would be served the Italian way. Wind from the bay swept through the backyard, making the string lights tremble like eyelids before a verdict. The scent of champagne mixed with damp grass, the soft jazz in the background was as thin as paper, ready to tear at the slightest pull. September 7th, 2023. The night David Moretti's world collapsed before 43 witnesses. 3 months of preparation. Maison Levine Catering, $24,000 for hors d'oeuvres and champagne. Flowers from High Crest Hill, $9,000. Lauren Whitmore recorded her story. Event of the season. Can't wait to celebrate our love in our home. Our home. The house I paid 42 years of mortgage for with sweat and grease. From the upstairs window, I watched them set up. White tents, mirror-polished rental chairs, string lights pulled taut like the final nerve in a dying body. David was in full command mode. Bar to the right, guests should see the garden first. Center the floral arch. This table's off by 2 inches. Everything must be symmetrical. 7 o'clock. Guests arrived. Judges, law partners, tech executives, old money families. Richard and Eleanor Whitmore stepped out of a rented Montclair sedan, dressed as if for a state banquet. David rushed to greet them. Richard, Eleanor, welcome back to Port Meriden. Remember our home? Of course, Eleanor said, her eyes gliding over the marble counters I had paid for. 8:15 p.m. The party was at its peak. 43 people mingled across the backyard of 218 Harborview Lane, raising glasses of champagne that cost more than a day's work from my old kitchen shifts. They talked about the wedding in Tuscany, 300 guests, honeymoon in Amalfi. Next August, Lauren said. Intimate but elegant. Intimate. 300 guests. Then came the sound that split the night. A diesel engine growling, air brakes hissing, Atlas relocation pulling up right at the gate. I looked at my watch. Right on time. Justice never runs late. The chatter dimmed. Guests craned their necks toward the side gate. David stepped out, champagne glass in hand, his face a mix of confusion and irritation. Sorry, there must be a mistake. We're not moving. The big man stepped forward, holding paperwork. Miguel Alvarez, team leader, Atlas relocation. 218 Harborview Lane, correct? We're handling the Moretti residence. Yes, Moretti, David said, frowning. But I didn't hire anyone. I opened the door and walked onto the porch. The keys in my hand clinked like a gavel striking wood. I did. David spun around. Silence sliced the air. A champagne glass shattered with a sharp ting. The crowd closed in, forming a half circle, an accidental jury. Miguel looked between father and son. Order says, full pack out tonight, handover by morning. New owners scheduled for final walkthrough at noon. Handover? David's voice cracked. Handover what? I stepped down one stair, meeting my son's eyes. I sold the house, David. A pause, measured, deliberate, signed May 5th. No one breathed. The clock ticked like a knife. You sold what? This house. The Hendersons' hedge fund family from New York. They take possession tomorrow. David's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, panic, and finally fury. Lauren's hand flew to her mouth, her dream garden party fracturing like porcelain. You can't sell it without telling me. I live here. You stay here, I corrected. The court calls that occupancy by permission. Richard Whitmore tried to keep his composure. Luca, there must be some misunderstanding. David and Lauren are engaged. They're planning a future. A future? I smiled faintly. Reasonable expectations don't live in someone else's house, sir. Around us, subtle movements rippled. A judge adjusted his tie. A partner gestured for his assistant to delete a story post. A socialite set her glass down, wiping her lipstick from the rim as if erasing evidence. Someone whispered, "David, don't. Not here." "When then?" I asked. When would be the right time to talk about 2 years of being treated like a servant in my own home? It was time for the evidence. "Ladies and gentlemen, since you're all here, let me introduce my family." I pushed open the side gate. "Matteo, Isabella, Enzo, Alessia, come meet David's friends." 4 young people walked in. Simple. Upright. Unflinching. They didn't bring champagne. They brought photographs, kitchen tools, business plans, and something this city had forgotten: gratitude. Matteo extended his hand. David, I'm Matteo Moretti, cousin from Sorrento." David looked at that hand as if it were a snake. I turned to the crowd. "My cousins from Italy. I brought them here with the money from selling this house." Lauren gripped David's arm. "What is he talking about?" Isabella stepped forward, her English careful but steady. "Mr. David, your father, he is a good man. He sponsored us. He gave us new lives." David went pale. I hadn't just sold a house. I had traded his inheritance for living blood, our legacy reborn. "Dad, we need to talk privately." "There's no private anymore. Tonight is public trial." I faced the gathered witnesses. "For years," David said, "I contributed nothing, that I lived off him, that I had no value in this house." Funny words for a man who's never paid rent, never bought groceries, never said thank you. Enzo lifted his phone, scrolling through photos. Luca worked 18 hours a day for 40 years. Moretti's table awards, faces he fed. I continued, my voice steady. Haven Point District still remembers that restaurant. 48 employees, a lifetime on his feet. And David? He was ashamed of it. Changed his name, hid the photos, told people I was the building maintenance man. The crowd murmured. A few looked down. They had eaten there once. Alessia hugged her sketchbook. "Uncle Luca brought us here. We won't forget." I nodded. $3,750,000. That's the sale price of this house. Every cent used for real family, legal fees, immigration, flights, housing, education, business capital. David's jaw clenched. "You can't. That was my future." "Your future?" I let out a quiet laugh. "You threw your future away the moment you were ashamed of the man who gave you everything." Richard's face reddened. "Luca, this is erratic." David had expectations for the family home. Matteo's voice cut sharp and calm. "There are no expectations without respect." "Tony," Lauren began, then caught herself. "David, tell him this is a misunderstanding." But David stayed silent. He looked at the faces that mirrored his own, only their eyes were different. Isabella handed me an album, 4 generations of the Moretti family in Sorrento. I raised it high. "This is our history. Our great-grandfather started with a food cart. Our grandfather opened a restaurant. I brought that name across the ocean so my son could study at Yale University, at Princeton." Matteo stepped in. "And now we carry it forward. I'll open Moretti's in Haven Point. Isabella will enter nursing. Enzo will run consulting. Alessia will study fine arts. All of us grateful, all of us proud of our roots, all of us ready to work." The jury began to disperse, senior partners shaking their heads, 2 judges murmuring about an early morning docket, Richard pulling Eleanor toward the garden gate. "Lauren, we're leaving." "Mother, wait." "Now." Lauren turned back, her eyes dry but clear. "David, I need to say something." She slipped off her $54,000 engagement ring, set it gently on the patio table. "I choose a man who honors where he came from. I'm sorry." And she left without another word. 12:20 a.m. Atlas Relocation had finished loading. The music was gone. The string lights flickered once, then went dark. David stood alone in the empty living room. The recessed lights cast pale rectangles on the walls where family photos once hung, Dust glimmered like ash. I looked at him smaller than his own shadow. Congratulations, son. You finally got what you wanted. Freedom from your shameful immigrant family. And now, you're free from everything else too. The house went silent. Only the sound of keys falling into the hands of their rightful owner. The night thinned like a spreading ink stain. The moving trucks pulled away, leaving behind an empty yard and the ting of David's iPhone shrill as a belated alarm. "Where am I supposed to go now?" David asked, his hands still trembling. "That's no longer my concern, son." Miguel Alvarez, the Atlas relocation foreman, handed me the final papers. "All packed up, Mr. Moretti. We'll deliver everything to your new place at Brookhaven Terrace tomorrow morning." "Thank you, Miguel. The tip's in there for working so late." The truck rolled out of 218 Harborview Lane. David's phone screen flashed non-stop, messages, mentions, clips. His face grew paler with each one. "Dad, my phone's blowing up. Someone posted tonight's video. Lauren's friend filmed everything." "Of course. Rich people archive everything, especially drama." "How many views?" 58,000, and climbing. Number engagement party meltdown, number Italian justice. A pinned comment read, "If he treats his father like that, how will he treat anyone else?" The internet was dismantling the image he'd spent years polishing. My cousins came to say goodnight before heading to the temporary house. Before they left, each one shook David's hand, a courtesy he had never once shown me. David, Matteo said quietly, "when you want to remember where you come from, call me." David just nodded, speechless. Midnight. Two of us, in an empty living room. He sat on the bare floor where the luxury sofa once stood. I looked through the curtain, the Hendersons' car already parked out front. "They want to settle in quickly," I said. "Good family. 3 kids, 2 dogs. They'll live here, not turn it into a museum." "Dad, please, there has to be a way to fix this." "Fix what? Your reputation?" "Everything. The house. Lauren. My job." "Your job?" He held up his phone. 3 missed calls from Edward Brierson. 2 red-flagged emails. "He wants me in his office Tuesday morning, 9 o'clock. Says this kind of publicity isn't good for the firm. You should have thought of that before humiliating your father in front of an audience." Ping! A text from Lauren. "I'm at the hotel with my parents. We need to talk tomorrow. I didn't know you thought of your father that way." "She's going to call off the engagement," I said. "She's smart. I always knew you didn't deserve her." "What do you want me to say, Dad? I'm sorry. Is that enough?" "Consequences don't accept apologies. This isn't about hurt feelings, David. It's about character, who you choose to be when you think no one's watching." 1:50 a.m. My phone rang. Clara Navarro. "Mr. Moretti, everything's finalized. The Hendersons are thrilled. They said thank you for keeping the house in such perfect shape." "My pleasure, Clara. Oh, by the way, the Meriden Herald wants an interview about the family reunion. You're trending on TikTok." David heard every word. "You're enjoying this." "I'm finding it instructive." "Instructive how?" "Watching you learn what happens when you burn bridges. Because when you need to cross back, you'll find there's no bridge left." Sunday morning. Cold sunlight cut through the curtains. The story had left social media and gone mainstream. The Meriden Herald. Italian immigrant sells home. Reunites family after son's betrayal. Port Meriden Business Journal analyzed the legal angles. Epicurean Journal ran a feature titled, "Authentic Italian Cuisine Returns to Haven Point." David's phone buzzed non-stop. Reporters, tabloids, reality show producers. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Edward Brierson finally called, his voice flat and slow, like reading an indictment. "David, tomorrow, 9 a.m. my office. Don't be late." He hung up, and for the first time, I saw real fear in my son's eyes. "I think I'm about to lose my job." "Probably." "I'm 36, Dad. Law school loans, credit card debt, car payments. Without this job, You'll manage. You're smart, Stanford educated, well-connected. But in Port Meriden, reputation is everything, and his had just gone up in flames before tens of thousands of witnesses. There must be something I can still do." "There is," I said after a pause. "Learn. 6 months later, November 2023. I sat inside Moretti's Table 2, Matteo's restaurant, listening to the hum of the restored 1978 brass pasta roller, the sound of a heart mending itself. 15 students laughed through a pasta-making class, flour floating in the sunlight like golden dust. Isabella had graduated top of her nursing class and joined Meriden University Medical Center, caring for the elderly. Enzo had 6 consulting clients, Italian firms, expanding into the U.S. Alessia had her artwork displayed at a gallery in Cedar Line, quarter vibrant pieces celebrating heritage. They called me every Sunday, real conversations about dreams, struggles, laughter. They treated me like family, because I was family. David was fired from Brierson & Cole 3 days after the confrontation. Conduct inconsistent with the firm's values, damage to professional reputation. He now worked at a small personal injury practice, earning about 60% of his former salary. Lauren broke off the engagement. Her parents threatened to cut her off if she married the man who treats his father like garbage. She's now dating a tech executive. Caption under her latest post: "Finally found someone who shares my values." Last month, David came to Matteo's restaurant during peak hours and asked to talk. He was different, humbled, older, eyes weary after an expensive lesson. "Dad, I understand what you were trying to teach me. Do you? I threw away everything that mattered for people who never truly cared." "That's a start. Is there any way we could try again?" I looked around. My real family was laughing, building something honest and beautiful. Then I looked at my son, my blood, but a stranger. "David, there's always a seat at the Sunday table, but only if you come as yourself, not as Tony Roman. You must be ready to remember where you came from. If not, then you'll stay lost." He left without ordering. I haven't seen him since. Matteo still keeps a seat open in case he ever finds his way home. Family isn't just blood. Honor isn't credit. It can't be paid in installments. The bridge is burned, and the water is cold. If you believe that honor can't be bought with money, and that not everyone deserves to stay in your family, leave a comment below. I choose truth over appearances. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share. Because sometimes, justice doesn't need a courtroom. It just needs one person brave enough to say, enough.